Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Amsterdam Talk Season 4, Episode 27. I'm your host, Rod, and today we bring to you Miss Lauren Hayes, a swinging lifestyle coach. How are you doing, Miss Lauren?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Lauren Hayes. I am a relationship coach supporting mostly ENM couples, ethically non-monogamous couples. This can be swingers and or polyamorous or anything in between because there are a lot of different models. Um, and yeah, I've been doing this for about 2 years. My husband and I have been swingers for 6 and married for 19.
Mm, that's wonderful right there. So, let me see. We have this right here. So, you basically say, so you started about 2 years ago. So can you share your personal journey into this non-monogamy and how it influenced your decision to become a relationship coach?
Yeah, so we've been swingers for 6 years, and the way it started, there's a little bit of a backstory that I'll summarize really quickly. That we had been approached maybe 6, 7 years before we got into the lifestyle, and we were approached by a polyamorous couple, wondering if we were polyamorous. And at the time, we really didn't know anything about it. So we were fascinated by that and asked a lot of questions, but we were not interested at the time. Then, fast forward 6 or 7 years, and I was walking through the bedroom, and my husband was like, I just feel like there's something more, which was startling.
Hmm.
And, I asked him, what does more mean? And he was like, I'm not even sure. And I asked him if he wanted a girlfriend because that was the model that we had sort of learned about, which was polyamory. And he said, no, I don't, but I just feel like there's something more. So we just started doing a lot of searches on the internet and eventually found the book, The Ethical Slut. And that helped us a lot. We went chapter by chapter, kind of learned every week, what the options are, what all the terms are, what all the things, and just slowly start talking about it and comparing. Like, I think this is interesting. I think this is sexy. I think this is not sexy. I think that's not interesting. And my fear at the time, and I mean, honestly, to this day, has always been that we would want something different. But um, yeah, we kind of hopped in and enjoyed the journey very much. My turn to coaching was kind of a COVID thing. You know how a lot of us switched careers during COVID, and so
Okay.
yeah, I've always been sort of a coach type and very into personal development and spirituality and personal growth, and so I took my COVID time and was trained as both a life and relationship coach.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit. So when that conversation came up and said I need a little bit more, and how did that take you? Like when you heard that,
Yeah,
like
that where that took me was a very scary place where I felt like I was not enough. I felt like, there was something wrong, and I was very confused. I thought he was unhappy. So those were like my first couple of questions. Like, I thought we were happy. He's like, we are very happy. And
mm,
he's like, I am really happy. I just feel like there is a little bit more. And so our journey as swingers we've done almost everything together,
mm,
which is pretty typical for swingers. And we can get into more of that later. But that's at least how we started. And yeah, we've had a lot of fun through the years. And also, I mean, my decision to become a coach was driven by just how much I learned and recognizing how much I could help others who were wanting to at least,
mm.
check out non-monogamy, have conversations about non-monogamy, maybe become non-monogamous. And so that's what I do now is I just help couples navigate the tricky waters because it is tricky, it's complicated, it's all the things it sounds like it might be.
Mhm. So how do you say it's tricky and it's complicated. How do you go about having these relationships without a person per se somebody's catching feelings for the actual opposite person that's outside of this relationship? How does
Yeah.
that work?
Okay, so first of all, just for anyone who doesn't know, I want to distinguish under the umbrella of ethical non-monogamy, there's
Hmm.
two models: swinging, which is typically something you're doing with a primary partner. It's
Hmm.
more sexual and friendship in nature. You're not out there looking for other romantic relationships. For polyamory, you may or may not have a primary relationship or marriage, and you're out there looking for romantic, emotionally committed relationships. So that's the primary difference between these.
Hmm.
Now, I always say there's like a dotted line between these communities. We are separate communities and people cross over back and forth all the time.
Okay.
One of the things about non-monogamy is that because we grew up in a monogamous culture,
Hmm.
when you enter non-monogamy, first of all, you know very little about it. Second of all, you really have a blank slate to
Hmm.
create whatever you want to create. So that's one of the things I say often. Non-monogamy can be anything you want it to be as long as everybody knows about it and everybody is consenting.
Right.
So, and that is the definition of the ethical part of
Hmm.
the ethical non-monogamy. So a lot of us in the biz or even just in the community drop ethical
Hmm.
because for us, the ethical is implied in non-monogamy. If you are in a relationship and doing these things that your partner doesn't know about, we
Hmm.
already have a term for that, which is an affair or cheating.
Right.
So for us, we just use the term non-monogamy or non-monogamous. Then, so like I said, within that, you're really creating whatever really works for you. And as long as everybody in your party is on board, whatever works is, there are no rules, if you will, around what you can create. And that's why you'll meet a lot of people that are like, well, we started as swingers, but now we kind of do our own thing. Or other people will be like, well, we're mostly polyamorous, but sometimes we do other things. So um, you'll hear that all the time because everyone does feel like they're just kind of creating their own thing.
Okay, so you said you guys do everything together. So like, how does this work when you do everything together? Is it like, do you pick all the time, or he pick all the time, or he just decides to,
We
or
both pick all the time. So
okay.
in the model of swinging, I will say how things typically work because it's not always how things work. But typically, couples are meeting up with other couples, and
Okay.
so we are all looking for a four-way match so that everybody is clicking and connecting. And yes, that's
Hmm.
one of the things that can be tricky is finding a four-way match of couples that you click with. Oh, and I didn't actually answer your question about catching feelings.
Hmm.
So, as I mentioned, in swinging, typically you're not looking for romantic or committed relationships outside of your primary.
Hmm.
In polyamory, you are. So, is there risk of catching feelings, as you're going to say, and I'm going to say falling in love with someone who's not your partner? Of
Hmm.
course, there's that risk. Um, People always want to ask me how often I see it. I don't see it any more often in non-monogamy than I see it in monogamy.
Right.
I think when you go in with intention and expectations into any relationship,
Hmm.
mostly people are able to kind of keep their feelings in check. And that would be a boundary between a couple saying, we're not looking for a boyfriend or girlfriend. And, if that does start to happen, that's a conversation the couple would have. And is this something that we're open to or still not open to? So you have boundaries, but you're always revisiting your boundaries because things are changing all the time.
Okay. So, boundaries are always changing. So, like, what are the most common misconceptions about ENM that you encountered in your practice?
Yeah, so one of the more general ones that we can apply to all of ENM is that somehow we are not happy in our current relationships, and this applies to both polyamorous and swinging people, that we're not happy in our current relationships, which must be why we're out looking for others. There's a very there's another misconception that is very closely tied to that, which is we are less committed in
Hmm.
our relationships than monogamous people. Both of those could not be more untrue. And I'll explain that really quickly. First of all, on the being less happy, in order to actually bring in the complexity of any of the non-monogamous models, you have to be in a very solid place in your relationship, a very solid, secure, happy place.
Right.
I do see people trying to, this is one of the questions I ask people when they're getting into it. Are you trying to fix something in your current relationship? Because if that's what you're using this for, it's not going to work because you have to be going into this feeling like you've got all your shit pretty much together. Because what this is going to point out to you pretty quickly is that there are some weaknesses in the foundation of your relationship, cracks in the foundation. And so we're actually, and this is going to get into the committed conversation, we are very committed to the relationship, to these cracks that may show up in our foundation and to fixing them.
Okay.
So that's why I also assert in some ways you could say that we're more committed because I think we're committed to different things. I think sometimes in monogamy, people are committed to a person. And I think that can get dangerous because then that person can treat you however they want and you're committed to them.
Right.
I would say the distinction in non-monogamy that we learn early on or feel as a value is that we're committed to a relationship.
Right.
And we're very committed to that relationship and that relationship staying happy and healthy. And if it's not, then we're committed at working together to fix that. But it's always working towards something that's really working for both people.
Okay.
Or all the people if you're in a polyamorous relationship.
Right. So I want to ask this because you said, people go in as far as like as couples. Has there ever been a situation where you've seen where people just go in as like friends, like for hypothetically, me and you are just friends, and I say, hey, Lauren, let's just go to the swingers thing today and we going whatever. Has people ever came in like that, just as friends?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as long as if they're married, their spouses know that they're going as friends. That certainly can happen.
Okay.
If they are two single people, absolutely, that can happen. There are a lot of single people. Well, I don't want to say the term a lot. There are single people also in swinging and in polyamory. Now, polyamory is a much kind of even larger, broader term than swinging, I would say. So, of course, there are people that are single in polyamory because that's just how they're operating in their dating and marital lives. Now, in swinging, there are still people who operate as singles. And again, they may or may not be looking for a serious relationship, just as some swingers may or may not be looking for a relationship with a single.
Okay, so you have people that come in because be just friends, coworkers, whatever. They just want to try to do it tonight. But then, how do you have these conversations about non-monogamy? Contribute to the process of a conscious.
And I should also say, if you're going to come in as a couple that are friends. I'm assuming you are talking about a couple that already is in a sexual relationship as well, because that would be more awkward. I mean, they could come in as two singles or they come in as at least a sexual friendship, if that makes sense. To be kind of operating within again, there are no rules, but just for that to logistically work out well for them. And sorry, what was your other question?
No, I was just saying, how do you contribute to the process of a conscious relationship creation, like having a conversation about it?
How does who do that?
How do conversations about non-monogamy you contribute to that space, to that conscious relationship creation?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry, I thought I was relating it to your last question. So here's one thing that I feel really strongly about, which is most of us have chosen monogamy because it's all we ever knew. Right. It's how we grew up. It's what we saw. I would not even going to say it's what we were taught, because quite honestly, in our culture, we don't really teach monogamy all that well either.
Right.
Which, I think we should do. But, before we knew about non-monogamy, we really didn't know about non-monogamy. I feel like it's an area that people don't even know to know. some people do, and I think that's changing with younger generations. But once you do know something about it, even if you turn to your partner and you say, I don't feel like that's for us,
Right.
or, that is interesting. What do you think about that? Now you're making a much more conscious choice to be monogamous if in fact you learn more about non-monogamy and decide that it's not for you and that you're going to stay monogamous. Even in that 1 second, you're making more of a conscious choice. My hope also is that in that moment, you're like, and do we really feel like we're doing monogamy well? And then that starts another conversation about, is this relationship really working really well for both of us?
Okay. So you said some terms. So I pulled up some terms while we were actually talking. So
Okay.
now they have CNM. I don't want to say CNN. CNM
Yeah.
versus ENM.
Yeah. So that's consensual non-monogamy
Hmm.
and ethical non-monogamy. They are equivalent terms. Um, I would say ethical non-monogamy has become a little bit more popular than consensual non-monogamy, but that actually just depends. They're the same. They're interchangeable.
Okay. No, I just had these terms. Where'd it go at? Okay, so you have that. Of course, we know what an open relationship is. We talked about swinging. You talked about primaries and secondaries, triads. What else? Hinge, relationship, asterisk, poly, parallel poly. What's like the difference between those two?
So in polyamory, and this can get pretty complicated, so I'm not going to cover all the all the ways, but so within polyamory, you might have a relationship to, let's say you have two girlfriends or a wife and a girlfriend or whatever. They
Hmm.
may know each other and have somewhat of a relationship. That's often called a kitchen table polyamorous
Hmm.
setup. They may not know each other at all. And so
Hmm.
that's more of a parallel situation where they know of each other, but they don't know each other. And
Okay.
there's no plan to do that.
Oh, so there's no plan. So how would that work if there's no plan to get to know each other? If we all going to just be this one happy family or be one
Well,
accord,
then you're
like
actually operating as two separate relationships. You're not, there's no one living together. Well, you could be living with one of them, and then the other one, they just don't have a relationship between the two of them. You know, you're not bringing one over to the house when the other one is there. You're going out or to their place, or they just don't um, operate in the same circles
okay.
other than you.
So now they have a word of it, polysaturated.
It's a good one.
You know, yes, polysaturated therapy from poly clients often tell me they feel overwhelmed. So I guess
Did
that
you mention that you had other polyamorous people on the site or on the podcast before?
season one, yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
So we had those in the I can't remember their names, but they basically spoke about how they live together, how everything works for them, basically how they split everything in the middle and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Season long time ago. I mean, I should have re-listened to the episode before we started,
No,
but
that's fine. I was just curious if there was a particular slant to that one. Yeah, I mean, both, like I said, have their complexities, and I would say even more than the logistical complexities, which is what a lot of people want to jump to in conversation, especially for the polyamorous. It's like, how do
mhm,
you have time? How do you manage all these people? How do you manage your calendars? All the things. But I would say both actually are much more emotionally complex.
mhm,
Um, in the sense that you're dealing with some difficult emotions sometimes. People will ask about jealousy, and of course it brings up a lot of insecurities. And so this is also something that we're kind of signing up for in non-monogamy, is a lot of personal growth, and a lot of personal growth that comes from kind of facing some of these hard feelings.
well, here's a person that watched that show and remembers two people from the Progressive Love Academy was on. I I couldn't recall that, but thank you, faithful viewer, for that one. So, for the people that's actually watching it in the chat, what advice do you have for individual couples who are curious about, living this lifestyle, but unsure where to start?
Yeah. Well, I will plug my own website as a hub just for a lot of learning. Swinginglifestylecoach.com is my website. I have a couple of free downloadable guides on there, one of which is ENM right for you. So that
Okay.
contains a quiz and a guide just to get the conversation going about some of the things you might want to start talking about. There's another guide on there is called Popping the E&M Question. That's when one partner is curious or interested in E&M and they don't know how to bring it up to their partner. So I also have a blog on there. I do webinars. I have a free webinar called Just Curious. That can be another great place for a couple to start and just watch that together. I also have resources on there. I have other books that can be helpful and lots of podcasts that can also be helpful. So just a lot of information there.
There we go. Swinginglifestylecoach.com.
Yeah.
It's got some questions in there. Has any couples changed their mind, or one changed their mind and the other doesn't?
Yes. So I do have couples that will come to me and be like, we're curious about this. And they do some coaching and they talk about the options. And then ultimately they decide it's not for them. I mean, that's one thing I think people are scared sometimes to even talk about it or even bring it up to their partner when it's just a conversation. Nothing is happening yet. And I think one thing that's important to discuss when you're having these conversations, if you do have a partner, is you are the number one person to me, and whatever this is, it would never come between us. I think those kinds of affirming conversations are really important to have. And also, like, what are the motivations behind wanting to do this? Because some people, as mentioned, so if they're more attracted to polyamory, they may want more than one actual relationship. Some might be more attracted to swinging, which has a little bit more of like friendship and sexual adventure. Another way people will get into this is one or the other has a bisexual side of themselves that they are exploring. And so their partner will support that. So there are a lot of different reasons that people will get into it. And I think that's a great thing to start out with, is just understanding why your partner wants to do it. Because I know sometimes when we hear that is a curiosity, we can go to a place of like, I'm not enough. And it's so much not usually about that.
Mhm.
That's our insecurity talking. So just staying curious and what is interesting to you about it, because maybe that same thing is interesting to you about it as well. And sexual fantasy is another thing that will bring people into non-monogamy is, maybe they have a lot of bedroom talk. And then one day they're kind of like, look at each other and they're like, well, what if we actually made that happen?
Right.
So fulfilling sexual fantasy is another common reason people might consider it.
Okay. So, what insights have you gained about human connection and intimacy through your experience coaching these non-monogamous couples?
Yes, a lot. So I have a book coming out by the end of the year. I have 7 life and relationship lessons that I have learned and passed on. I won't necessarily share them all here. But one of them, and so what was talking about earlier about how in any relationship, no matter how solid it is or you think it is, there are
Mhm.
usually some cracks in the foundation. One of those things that can be highlighted very early on is if there are any codependent tendencies within the relationship. If there's one partner that's trying to please the other partner more, that's going to be shown really quickly. Because the last thing you want your partner to do is going into E&M, something very emotionally tricky, just for you. Like they have to have their own curiosity as well. So that's one of the first conversations to have and get clear on. Like nobody's doing this 100% for the other person. Um, and so that's one of my life lessons that I say, which is, love your partner, but love yourself a little bit more. So, always keep checking in with yourself, stay aligned with yourself, and don't do things that are not in alignment with you.
Mm. Okay, so that makes that they're not in alignment with you. So, I guess we would say, what are some universal relationship skills that you teach with these couples that could benefit monogamous
Yeah.
couples?
Yeah, so another one is a concept called emotional sovereignty. So, emotional sovereignty can best be explained by two uses of language that land very differently. So, an emotionally sovereign person. So, oftentimes how we speak in our relationships and the unhealthy way is like, you made me jealous by kissing her last night.
Mm,
So the idea, and then the other more emotionally sovereign way of saying this is, I was really jealous when I saw you kissing her last night. So emotional sovereignty is really owning your own emotions because quite honestly, no one can make you have any emotion. That is yours to have. So when you start in a place of, I have this emotion and I want to share this with you, that I'm experiencing this emotion, but I'm not blaming you or
mhm.
expecting you to fix it. Those are very different conversations. And so within lifestyle and swinging and polyamory, because we are dealing with a lot of hard feelings, that kind of language makes a lot of difference in owning your own hard feelings versus blaming your partner for causing them.
Okay. So somebody has a question. Ask the question. I see you say I got a question. You don't have to ask, just put it out there. But before we go wait for his question to come, what are some key takeaways about love and partnership that you observe from coaching both monogamous and non-monogamous clients?
I'm gonna have to reiterate the idea that I talked about earlier about really being committed to a relationship with another person versus just being committed to the person, because I think that's a really healthy thing to keep talking about. And I think when, sometimes, and this is what I meant when I said that I don't think we're often taught monogamy very well. So I think that what we're actually taught and shown through movies and whatever is that you find your one person, you're happy, you live happily ever after, and you never have to worry about your relationship again. That person's not supposed to leave you ever. And,
Right,
you don't have to really worry about your own behavior because you're now in this relationship forever. I
right.
think this is generates a lot of unhappiness in monogamous relationships when couples are not checking in with themselves on a regular basis. Are we happy? Are we feeling fulfilled? So one of my friends, they use what they call a 2-year relationship contract, and they actually created like a list of items that they rate their relationship on. And
Mm,
every 2 years, they revisit this contract and
mm,
they re-sign it every 2 years as well. So they talk about all these metrics that were, are important for them, and um, find out how each one of them are feeling about all these. Then the re-signing is really, it's real and it's very symbolic of, I'm choosing you. I'm continuing to choose you. And I think that the nature of that conversation and that re-choosing is very affirming for any relationship, monogamous or not.
okay. Well, he wrote his question. Let me put it on the screen. Who are you committed in a relationship that involves multiple people, or are you only looking out for yourself?
So you are committed to all the people that you are in a relationship with, and every one of those relationships, you're in conversation with the expectations with that person. Like I just mentioned about being committed to a relationship, you are now committed to several relationships. When I say committed, it is if you are a swinger and you're really only in this for friendship and some sexual activity, then even that, there is expectation between people. We are friends, and we are, friends with benefits, which is a term I don't love. But these are the understandings. So you have that understanding with every single person that you have any type of relationship with.
Mm, okay. Well, I know you watched the show because you actually said something prior before we started. So you know, towards the end of the show, there's a segment called "I Be Damned," where dates actually may go a little left, but well, I don't think anybody dies from the stuff we get. So it starts like this, and this is kind of related to what we're talking about today. My younger sneaky link. I'm 53. She's 36 and I enjoy watching and recreating porn. We've been linking at various motels for a year. We have fun, make recordings just for us. Our last day, she revealed that she loves me and wants to take our relationship to the next level. I was stumped. What level? Her. I'll be 40 soon, and I want more than this. I want a family with you. I want us to hold hands and walk downtown in public together. I want you to publicly claim me as your woman. And if you can't do that, I'm going to show your wife our homegrown movies. I agreed, but I also knew that this was the last time I would see her. While she was on top, I told her, I'm going to miss you. She snapped and choked me so hard I was fearful, but there was hope in her eyes. I stopped fighting and pretended to be dead. Her, I'm sick of ending niggas. She stole my money, phone, and left. She didn't end me, but she did in others. Should I tell the cops about this? I don't want my wife to find out. That is, I'll be damned. So he was dating a serial killer.
Is this just a share? I didn't listen the end of all your other episodes, so I'm not sure what to do with this.
Well, what you do about it is basically, well, I should explain the rules. I thought you listened to
I'm
everything, but
sorry, yeah, I
no, it's
didn't hear
fine.
it.
Basically, you just go back and to recreate what you would have did right. So I guess in this situation, we would say he should have just left her alone or actually told his wife that he wanted to actually experience these other things.
Yeah, either one. So in the beginning, you're either upfront with your partner about wanting, or actually, I shouldn't say either one, I should say both. You're upfront with your partner about other activities that you want, and you actually get the consent to do that. Now, no one has anything to hold over your head because your partner is consenting. On the other side is being in that continuous conversation with the other person that you're in relationship with. Here's what I'm willing to give. Here's what I don't have to give. I have this other committed relationship. I'm not going to commit to you. So just being very open and clear about your intentions for every relationship, what I would hope would also mitigate some of that.
I got you. So I know you said you got to go because you have something to do at 8 p.m. So I like to thank you for coming on. If you're looking for Lauren, you can reach her at Swinging Lifestyle Coach on Instagram. Her YouTube page is Swinging Life Coach.
Everything is
And
swinging lifestyle coach.
Swinging Life Coach, lifestylecoach.com. And you
Yeah.
said you got a book coming. So when would that book be
So
released?
that's
And
going to come out by the end of the year. If you're interested in that, I would go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. Everything new that I ever have happening, I will put out on my newsletter. I am not one of those people who emails every day or even every week. So that's really the best place to stay up to date on what I'm doing. And for sure, I'll be announcing the book launch there.
all right. So thank you for coming. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
you
for having
coming.
me.
So this is episode 27, and it's hard to make a segue from this show to next show because next week we taking you to church on the 28th. So I'll see you next episode 28. We're going to church, so I'll see you next Wednesday, 10/9 at 7 p.m. We have a young lady, Pearl, coming through, and she's a Columbia University graduate, and she does a whole lot of gospel things that will uplift you next week. So I'm not going to go into detail because we're coming from this to that. So, like she said, check the website, check IG, and you'll see what we got coming next week. If you need to follow her, everything is life swinging lifestyle coach. I'll see you next week, same time, same channel, same place. 7 p.m. And if you missed this, the replay will be on Friday and it will be on all audio will be on Friday about 1 o'clock p.m. Thank you. Thank you
Awesome.
again,
Thank
Lauren, for
you.
coming through. Good night, y'all.